of Science in Accounting from Africa University, which gives him a strong foundation in accounting principles and financial management. And then he also has a Master's of Science in Accounting from Oklahoma City University. This has given him like advanced expertise in accounting practices and financial analysis. And then he specialized in mergers and acquisitions at Wharton School of Business at University of Pennsylvania. For his professional journey, Mr. Tafadzwa has served as the second Vice President of Tax at Constellation Insurance Incorporated since August 2024, where he oversees tax strategies and regulatory compliance and develops strategic tax solutions to enhance financial performance. He's also the head of tax for Grid Insurance and the Mutual Group. For his skills, Mr. Munjanja has extensive experience in corporate US and international taxation with expertise in strategic planning, regulatory compliance, risk management, as well as mergers and acquisitions. He has in-depth knowledge of corporate tax laws and regulations and has proven leadership in guiding teams and fostering collaboration. He has a reputation as a very trusted advisor in taxation. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Mr. Tafadzwa Munjanja.
Wow, thank you very much, Lytton, for that wonderful introduction. Sometimes these documents make you sound larger than you really are. But really, I'm really just like you guys, only that maybe I'm a little bit more into my profession than you guys as you're getting started. So don't let it intimidate anybody. You are also walking that journey. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for this opportunity to come and present to you guys. I'm very honored and I'm very humbled by this great invitation to share my own knowledge in terms of financial planning, how best you guys can be able to navigate financial planning and generally how to look at taxation and how to best stay in compliance in terms of the tax aspects of this country, the United States. So I'm gonna give you back, Lytton or Kutemwa. Do you want me to start dive in, or is there some things that need to be discussed before I dive in?
Yeah, you can dive in. I have some housekeeping at the end.
Okay. Thank you. So, as Lytton said, my profession is taxation. Maybe I will just give a background. I am from Zimbabwe, born and raised in Zimbabwe. I moved to the United States 20 years ago in 2004 to pursue a Master of Science in Accounting at the university called Oklahoma City University. So as I'm presenting here, it kind of reminds me of my journey 20 years ago that you guys are undertaking. It's a wonderful, wonderful journey. And I hope you guys are enjoying as you getting into college and interacting and meeting people from different backgrounds, going into those classes. I remember when I was at Oklahoma City University, one of my the first guys I met were from Ghana, these guys from Accra, and I also met a lot of guys from Kenya, Ethiopia. I mean, it was a cross-pollination of countries, and of course, people from here in the United States, just interacting. And so as we interacted, it became social, it became academic. We were helping each other. If for example, I was doing a Master of Science in Accounting, and so we would sit, study at school, those quiet Sundays where you really don't have anything to do or anywhere to go, or a Friday night where you're thinking, what am I gonna eat? It's part of the college life. It also includes, I remember Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, very first Thanksgiving was so lonely. We literally had to try to figure out where to get food or where to go. So you're living that journey. It's really the same journey. I can tell you, I've met guys who've come here before me. It's the same journey. So as I kind of get into the tax aspects, I don't want to make this boring. So I'm going to be a little bit less formal. in my interactions, and I want you guys to ask questions. Use the chat box to ask questions, or if you want to mute your phone or your Zoom, by all means. So of course, you come and you've come here for education, but then you soon find out that there's many things that need to happen. You need to open a bank account. Your money needs to go somewhere. That's part of the financial planning aspect of things. And I remember having to walk to a Chase Bank. That was the first bank account that I ever opened. It was a Chase Bank account. And although I opened that one, but I eventually opened another Bank of America account. And you're students. You're talking about fees, right? Bank fees. So Chase was, not trying to say anything much about, whatever products I had, but Bank of America had a free checking account, where as a student you didn't need to pay any fees, and so I opted for that, and so those are the things, you guys. I'm sure you guys already have bank accounts. You already know the lay of the land, but in case you don't, there are banks that offer free checking accounts for students. So if you are paying any fees, if you're seeing a little $2 getting out of your account or $5 every month, you need to move around because that money adds up. So that's all part of that financial planning. It starts with those small decisions as you navigate yourself into the United States of America. So I guess first things first, if you have a bank account where you're paying bank fees, you need to move. You need to look for a checking account that offers a free checking account for students. And it's not just high school, it's university students and graduate students. So first things first. So and then of course, as you progress, you start asking questions or being told about issues of taxation, and you're thinking, okay, cool. What do I need to do? What is the tax return? They're telling me, I had a scholarship and I need to I need to file a tax return. It's confusing. And you ask for the form. Which form do I file? There's no clarity in terms of what you need to do. And so over the past years, I've had the opportunity last national students in terms of what those tax returns you need to file, what's the correct form, and so I will kind of delve a little bit into this particular topic. So generally, international students are always regarded as non-residents for tax purposes. And the IRS has these rules that are called the substantial present tests. If you number of days, then you qualify to be a resident for tax purposes. This rule apparently doesn't apply to international students. Even if you've done 2 years, 1 full year in the US, 3 years, they still say you're still a non-resident for tax purposes. And I hope you're really observing for tax purposes if you're an F1 student, an international student. So generally, that requires you to file a Form 1040 NR, which NR stands for non-resident tax return. And this particular topic, a lot of people don't understand it. And sometimes people inadvertently file a Form 1040 because they don't understand what the tax law is. And you can't blame anyone. US tax law is complicated. The Internal Revenue Code is thousands of pages. And this is why you notice that there's all these companies. If right this time of the year, right, we're in March, you'll see these banners, HR block, TurboTax, fast tax, or you see signs as you're driving around, walking around, you want to file your taxes and all that stuff. The reason is most people don't know how to prepare their tax returns because they're very complicated. And so this is where I come in as a tax practitioner to help. Although myself, I've mostly been on the corporate tax side of things, so I've not delved much into individual taxes, but I'm dangerous enough to know some things. Let me pause there. Are there any questions?
I have a question. So
Yes.
I'm not sure if you're going to get to this later, but so there are certain institutions that would employ us as international students, but they don't know the kind of forms that we need. And like, it's like I want to file my taxes correctly, but they are not giving me the right forms. And it's like I also am not that conversant with the process, you know, for me to guide them and direct them on what they're supposed to do. So do you have any advice when dealing with such places that, you know, they're not really helping us and it just gets more complicated?
Yeah. So in terms of forms, so they're supposed to give you the same forms that they'll give a US taxpayer. For example, if you work for any company on campus, off campus, OPT, whatever it is that if you're working, CPT, there's and they employ you as an employee, they're still supposed to provide you with a W-2, a form W-2. That's what they should provide you with. On that form W-2, and really, so I'm not trying to, I don't want to make it too complicated for you guys because some of the things are things I would be advising the employer. And so you shouldn't worry about those. For example, withholding, how much should they, what are they supposed to withhold? Social Security? Are they supposed to withhold disability? That's the responsibility of your employer. But for yourself, if they say they don't know, you tell them you're supposed to provide me with a W-2. That's the form that they should provide you with. Because that's the form that's officially used to report income, one to the states, to the federal, to the IRS, and then to yourself. You're supposed to also get that W-2. Did I answer that question correctly?
Yes, you did. So I think this is like specific to me because anyway, so I'm doing research and I get paid as in stipends and not
Yeah.
as a salary. So the W-2 was not given. And then I know there's a separate form
Oh,
that's supposed to be issued
yeah.
and yeah, it just got very
So it's more if it's a stipend, here's the question. You're earning that income, why? Because you're providing a service? Are you working in some office?
it's for doing research in
Yep,
an institution, yes.
in an institution, and you're reporting to somebody,
Yes.
and they're setting your time when you do the research or when you show up.
Yeah.
So they should provide you with a W-2.
I will let them know.
They should provide you with a W-2. If in doubt, if in doubt, they at least at a very minimum should provide you with a 1099 miscellaneous form.
Okay.
Yeah. 1099. You just tell them, I should be getting a W-2 because I was doing work, I was working, I was doing research. I was on a schedule that you guys provided me, so I should get a W-2. However, if at a minimum you're not sure, I think I should get a 1099.
Thank
So
you for that.
you're welcome. You're welcome. All right, so I am going to get a little bit deeper into tax and in terms of what needs to be filed. And so let's see here. So I'm gonna share my screen. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so here I'm sharing this website here. It's called Spring Tax. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about Spring Tax, but it's one of the platforms that help international students file their taxes. And so and if you guys would like to write that down, it's called Sprint Tax. I think it's a pretty good guide in terms of what you need to do. So so it has its table of contents here. And so first of all, there's always the question, do international students need to file taxes in the US? And we've already talked about it, that there's this tax regime. Everybody's liable for taxes. So as long as you earn any income in the United States of America, you're required to file taxes. What is that income? And if you're looking at the website, things like salaries and wages, prizes, tips, interest, dividends. They talk about scholarships and so maybe I can expand a little bit on scholarships and grants because this affects most of you guys. You guys may have scholarships, and then you may thinking, am I going to owe taxes? So it's not always the case. So if you get a scholarship from your university, and the scholarship is to cover for your tuition, your books, generally you're not required to pay taxes on that piece of the scholarship. The only piece that quote unquote they call unqualified scholarship amounts relate to if you get a scholarship for room and board, then that one may be taxable, so you may have to pay income taxes on that one. But at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of university to provide the forms, to prepare the forms. And so for scholarships, you should get a 1099-T. That's where tuition payments are reported, including scholarships. And that's the form that you use to report your income, if there is any, on your Form 1040 NR. And so then there's two pieces of taxes. There's the federal tax piece, which is what we were talking about, but also states do have income taxes as well. Almost all states in the US have income taxes where you need to file. So it shows here, and then there's other states that don't have taxes, like Delaware, I think Texas, Washington State, Florida, and I think it's on this list here. But generally, if you're going to file your taxes, you're going to file a federal tax return, you're going to file a state income tax return. So this question here, do F1 students pay taxes on OPT? Yes, you will pay taxes on OPT because that is considered salaries and wages. So the same question you had asked me about, don't know, I'm not sure which forms I should get. If you're on OPT, if you go on OPT or CPT, you should be getting a form, a W-2 as well. That's the form that the company should send you, and that's the form that you use to file your tax return. And I apologize, I didn't quite talk about due dates for these tax returns. So tax returns are usually due the year after the preceding year. So for example, 2024 ended December 31st. The taxes for 2024 are due April 15th. That's when you have to have your Form 1040 NR filed. Plus, I'm sorry, I kind of skipped that part. I think is there a question? Oh, okay. So I think I can proceed here. It's the same case with CPT. There's the OPT, CPT. You still have to file your Form 1040 NR for CPT as well. So it's still subject to income taxes. And so this is that note that says F1 students will be considered exempt individuals for the first 5 calendar years of their time in the US. Strangest rule. A lot of people don't quite understand it. Why? Because, there's a Form 1040, then there's a 1040 NR. And, there's always the misconception, and it's really because people don't know. A lot of international students will file a regular 1040. But really, the correct form that should be filed should be a Form 1040 NR. However, if there's a change of status as you're kind of getting into maybe working, have a work permit or change of status from students to some other status that you have in the US, that can change. You can then start filing your tax return as a US resident, and that will switch to a Form 1040.
Thank you, bro. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when you have a change of status, that could potentially change your income tax filing maybe from a 1040 NR to a Form 1040. But there's this substantial present test that we talked about. And let's see, anything. So here it says, however, some can be considered residents or resident aliens for tax purposes. But like I said, you have to have transitioned either from, I think maybe after the 5 years as an international student, you can transition to being a resident for tax purposes, or if there's a change of status. So is there any other questions in terms of Form 1040 NR?
We have a question in the chat that says, are there any penalties if you file with a 1040 instead of a 1040 NR as an international student?
Yeah. The penalties are because the 1040 is for US residents. So they do have more benefits associated with the 1040 than the 1040 NR. For example, they have the standard deduction, they have education credits, there's several tax credits to benefit US tax residents. And so you could potentially, get a refund, out of, your tax return. And so what could happen is, in the case that your tax return is audited by the IRS, you may be required, the IRS may come back and say, you filed an incorrect form, you got a refund of, for example, $2,000, and you need to pay it back. So usually that's the penalty, that they will correct they may audit, correct your return, and then you have to pay back the money. I'm not sure that there's a particular penalty, because I think, sometimes people just don't know what form to file. but the IRS, should they correct you, they're probably going to ask you to pay back the money. And maybe there could be a penalty if they truly say, because you filed a 1040 instead of a 1040 NR, so you never filed a 1040 NR. So there may be a late filing penalty there and interest. But I think the most critical thing is that if, say, you got a refund out of filing a 1040, you may have to pay that money back to the IRS. So good question. Good question. Any other questions?
Yes, I also have a question. So
Yeah.
I've heard that once you are now being taxed as a US resident, that takes you on like your worldwide income. Like if you have a small business in Zimbabwe, they're going to tax you on that as well. And then I've also heard of like the closer connection test that you can use to like get exemption in that regard. Is it like an easy thing to navigate once you're like on OPT?
Yeah, so you're only liable to taxes earned in the United States, in the 50 states of the United States. If you're on American soil and you earn money, that's all you're liable for. If you earn money in Ghana, the US has no jurisdiction over that money. They cannot tax it. But if it's US, yes. Now, are you required to report that you earned income in Ghana? There could be a requirement. But is it taxable? No, it's not taxable. Because yes, you may be required to report, but there is no jurisdiction to tax that money because you didn't earn it in the United States of America.
Thank you.
So if for example, if you're a student and you went to Zimbabwe or to Kenya and you worked over there, you're not liable for taxes on that income. Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a question. Malvita. Go ahead. Your hand is raised.
Okay. I have a question on the if let's say, for example, me, I try
Yes.
to use the Spring tags and they say that my 1098T is not important to put it there. Like I'm a GA, so part of my tuition is paid by the school and I get a stipend. Can't I use that to get like to not pay taxes? I don't know if that's sounding right, but maybe to reduce the amount that I have to pay for tax. So Spring Tax says that I can't put in my 1098T.
Onto their software.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. So like I'd said before, a few minutes ago, that the difference between a Form 1040 and a 1040 NR is because they're trying to limit the benefits that regular US taxpayers would get. And one of the benefits is tuition payments. So if a United States resident went to university, paid $10,000 in tuition, they will be sent a Form 1098T in the mail so that they can use it to enter it on the 1040 so that they can get a credit or a reduction in their tax liability. That's a benefit. The United States is saying, because we're trying to promote, or we really respect people who are paying tuition, we're going to give you a deduction or a credit on your tax return, a benefit because of that. So what I think Spring Tax, what it may be confusing is that the United States resident will be able to use it to enter it on the 1040 so that they can get a credit or reduction in their tax liability. That's a benefit. The United States is saying, because we're trying to promote, or we respect people who are paying tuition, we're going to give you a deduction or a credit on your tax return, a benefit because of that. So what I think Spring Tax, what it may be confusing benefit to say, no, wait, if you're using spring tax and you're filing a 1040 NR, why would you want to get this benefit? And I think that's what they're trying to prevent, but they're not understanding that you may be wanting to report maybe your scholarship information or whatever amounts that you got. Did you get a 1098T from your school? Majita,
Um,
did you get a 1098T from your school?
sorry, I couldn't unmute my Zoom, but yes, I did get my 1098T.
Yeah, yeah, which makes sense to me. And your school, I think that's why they sent it. So, um, so and to me, I almost feel like that's a limitation that maybe Sprint Tax has, because they should allow you to enter whatever you want to input on there, and then the software should be able to figure it out that you're filing a 1040 NR, and this is probably what you can input. If you'd like, maybe you can get my information from your team, and maybe Zoe has my information as well, and maybe we can discuss this if you'd like.
Okay.
Or I would call Sprint Tax if you have the chance to do so, and explain to them your situation.
Okay.
Yeah. And then of course there are other providers in the market. There's HR Block, there's TurboTax, and you might find that they are a little bit more, they may be more interactive as well.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, sorry. I also have another question. I'm sorry.
Yep. Go ahead.
So at my school, I didn't know like anything about the taxes because like what they say is confusing. So I wanted to hear what you were going to say. But so they don't take taxes like federal taxes, right? But then I'm supposed to pay the federal tax. So isn't there like aren't they supposed to hold like some federal taxes on my paycheck? Not really sure.
They are. They are. So give some grace to your schools. Give them a little bit of grace because taxes are, these guys are probably, international office, or, and they probably don't understand themselves either. But here is the tax law. Everyone in the United States who earns income, especially if it's wage income, where you worked, you're on campus, you have an on-campus job or CPT or OPT, they are supposed to withhold taxes. The amount of taxes that they withhold depends on your tax status. So if you are a non-US person or an international student, as this shows here, as we're discussing this, they are required to withhold 30% of your income right off the bat. Now, it becomes a little bit more convoluted because, so let's say you are a student from the United Kingdom, or you're a student from Canada, and then you're a student from, let's say, Lesotho, right? Those three countries. A student from Canada, even though the tax law will say they should withhold 30% of the amount, but then United States and Canada have the tax treaty, and the tax treaty will say, well, we get along pretty good. We sat down, US and Canada, we said we're not going to tax each other in terms of our citizens. So, so then they'll ask you to complete what they call a Form W8BEN. And so when you complete that form and you claim what they call a treaty exemption, then you're not subject to the withholding. So they're required to pay you your pay without any withholding. And then when you then file your tax return, you shouldn't even have a tax liability. You shouldn't owe any money either in that process. Now, again, this is between the United States and a country that they have an income tax treaty with. So that's how it becomes so complicated, and that's why, you know, these schools, and I'll be very honest, even corporations in the corporate world where I work, we have issues with this. People don't understand, they don't know what to do in terms of withholding. It's a big, big problem. What it eventually ends up hurting is the taxpayer yourself, because the tax return is going to say you made $10,000, the income tax rate is 15%. So, you know, so you owe $1,500. And then you're like, wait a minute, they didn't withhold. Or where do I get 1,500 from? So this is where there's a little bit of tax planning involved. So, but you know, if you're a student, this is not stuff you're normally generally thinking about. But I often advise people individuals as well to say, okay, even if they don't withhold, save a little bit of your income in a savings account. You know, if you see that they're not holding any taxes on your paycheck, save $20 or $30 or $100 from your paycheck. Don't touch it, save it, because it will help you next year when your tax bill comes, when you file your Form 1040 NR. But it's an excellent question. All I can say is give them grace. They probably are not even sure what they need to do, but they should withhold. But to protect yourself, because at the end of the day, you're by yourself when you file your tax return and you're looking at a $1,000 tax bill. So if you can, as you're getting your paychecks, you know, if it's bi-weekly, just take $50, don't touch it. If it's once a month, just save $100 and then just save it. When you file your tax return next year, you'll appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Jefferson, I think your hand is raised. You can go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So like really just building on like still on the questions of 1040 and 1040 NRO, like yeah, because like I found my tax return like recently, like this week or last. So I used the tax professional because like there were so many things you like all the stuff you said, she also said most of those stuff, right? But one thing she did differently was she used that substantial presence test because IBS is 2023. And initially when I was filing my returns, right, she did two things. So she was, if she filed it non-resident or resident, then she said when she tried to file it non-resident, my tax bills were like way higher than if she filed it as a resident. So I just want to kind of like, so she filed it as a resident. She used the Form 1040 instead of the 1040 NRO because she said the 1040 NRO meant I would pay like a higher wage bill, like I will have more to pay back to the federal government, like instead of using the 1040. So I just wanted to find out, like, I hope I'm in the clear in that region because she's like a professional, right? People on campus use her, so that was why I also used her. But when you mentioned that 5 years exemption, I was a bit confused on that.
Yeah, no, it's the weirdest rule. They, quite frankly, the letter of the law says, if you're an international student, you should be filing a 1040 NR. And there's a 5-year window where you're still required to file a 1040 NR. Now, here's, like I said, there's always exceptions to the rules. You could have had the change of status that allows you to file as a resident. You did say that you use the substantial present test. Now, I think one of the things I can say is within the tax profession, so tax interpretation can vary and how you treat taxation. There's a little bit of, if there's no, as much as the letter of the law is there, one tax practitioner may tell you, but I understood the tax law to say
it's the iPad.
I can use substantial presence test. And then I can come and say, no, I don't quite agree. I don't quite think that the rule is flexible enough to allow substantial presence tests. And I do think that the substantial presence test only qualifies after the 5-year window. So each tax practitioner is different. Of course, filing a 1040 and a regular 1040, you're going to get more deductions, more benefits, because those are the benefits that are accessible to U.S. tax residents. But if you're non-resident, you're not, you don't qualify for those benefits, and so you're probably going to owe more money. It's very clear. That one is clear. So this is why, as I was answering, Malvita's question was to say, as an international student, you may be required to file a 1040 NR. However, as you earn your money, put money aside, bi-weekly, put $50. And it's just really advice that I'm not giving it only to international. So I'm not only giving this advice to international students, even US residents. I always say, if you find yourself owing taxes at the end of the year, maybe you need to be saving a little bit more on your paychecks to pay for any potential tax liability the following year. So Jefferson, to answer you, I think that your tax practitioner probably interpreted the tax law the way they did. And really, I can't say much about it, but my understanding really is, as an international student, you're still required to file a 1040 NR, with exceptions, which could be a change of status. Substantial present test, as far as I can see it, probably after the 5-year window. Okay.
Okay, then that makes sense.
Yeah. Thank you. So yeah, and also I encourage that, like what Jefferson did, if you're in doubt, just contact a tax practitioner, a CPA firm. There's a lot of small CPA firms that don't charge too much. Contact them and they can be able to help you out as well. Don't try to do it all by yourself. There's always help. Those CPA firms help. There's smaller ones. In all cities, you're always going to find, CPA firms that are providing tax services. So if you really are not sure, please do contact a local CPA firm. Or you can, because they're more personal, you can walk into the office, you can talk to them about your tax situation and what's going on. So I would recommend that as well. Okay. Any questions?
We have some questions in the chat as well. The first one is, can I file my tax myself? What documents would I need?
Yeah. Well, you probably need, so you can prepare your taxes by yourself, but you need a platform to e-file. So the platforms that are available, the Sprint Tax that you're currently looking at here, there is H&R Block, there is TurboTax, there's Fast Tax. Those are software programs that you can create an account, log in, in terms of your documentation that you will need to use, mostly you need documentation for your income to report your income, which could be a W-2 or forms 1099. Those are the two main forms that you use to report your income. But in terms of can I file my own tax return? Yes, you can file your own tax return. You will need a platform to file your own tax return, where you create your own accounts. It could be Sprint Tax, it could be HR Block, it could be TurboTax, Fast Tax, and several other software programs that are out there in the market. Good question. Good question.
Then the other question is money received from home treated as income?
No, not income. Even if I had a question, I think they got a loan to pay for their tuition and they weren't sure whether they needed to report the loan that they got. You don't need to report. It's not income. Your loan is to use to pay for tuition. You're going to have to be repaid back at some point. So it's not income. You don't need to report that. If you receive money from your family, from your home country, it's not taxable income either. Uchenna Justin, you have a question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hello, thank you so much again for this session. I just wanted to ask for these platforms that you listed out, like Sprint Tax, I think, TurboTax. Which one do you recommend the most? Is there like a most preferred one for us?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'm more biased towards TurboTax. That's what I use personally for my own taxes. I think that they have more tools. It's easier to use. And for students, I think for certain income levels, you can be able to qualify for free, to file for free. So for me, I would recommend TurboTax. I've never used Sprint Tax. I'll also recommend HR Block as well. And in fact, I would also recommend, if there's a local HR Block office in your city, all these local CPA firms, walk over there. Just walk over there, ask them if they can be able to help you. But in terms of software that you can self-help, software you can use, I use TurboTax, and so I've enjoyed using it. It's so much easier, more interactive. So that's what I would recommend, but good vibes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Are there any questions in the chat? Anybody who wants to unmute and Life? Go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Sorry, I logged in a little bit late. You may have covered this. So let's say I got an internship and I'm responsible for tax reporting. What happens if I don't report? What's the worst case?
So first of all, tax law requires you to file a tax return. You're required by the law to file your tax return. You're required by the law to report the income you earned during your internship. And the way you report that would be to file a Form 1040 NR or a Form 1040 if you're a US resident. If you do not, you remain liable for that income. There's no statute of limitation where it expires to say, oh, after 5 years, you don't need to. You remain liable. One day, when you're wanting to apply for maybe to be a US citizen or a permanent resident, a question may come to say, are you up to date with all your tax returns? You don't want to have sleepless nights over that issue. So there's many, many things that could be of consequence for not filing tax returns. An unfiled tax return remains unfiled. A filed tax return has a statute where it expires. where the IRS cannot come and say, hey, you filed a tax return in 2004, would like to audit it. Because statute is 3 years. After 3 years, they can go back and open up a tax return that you filed 3, 4, 5 years ago. It's done because you filed it. But if you never file a tax return, it's open. They can ask you, did you file your tax return in 2005? And maybe you didn't. And then you say, oh no, you're still required to file. And then the consequence of it, penalty, there's a penalty, there's interest that will accrue throughout all these years that you didn't file. So I always tell people, just file. There's everybody's filing tax returns. Just file, get it out the way, get it done, and don't have sleepless nights over things that are simple to resolve.
Okay, thank you.
We have a question in the chat. Is TurboTax non-resident accommodating?
I don't know. I've not ever used it for non-res. So, but I would like to think they are, because they're a larger platform. They have more resources in terms of customer service. If you start filing, you can always chat. There's always a chat, or you can even talk to a live person right away. So they have the resources, but I've never used it to really say they're top notch, or maybe they're not good enough. I wouldn't say that. Really, my experience is just filing a 1040.
And another question, please clarify, is tax return the same as tax refund?
So a tax refund is calculated on a tax return. A tax liability is calculated on a tax return. So the tax return is the starting point. That's where you do your plus and minus calculations. That leads you to an answer that either leads to a tax refund or a tax liability. So a tax refund is the product of someone having filed a tax return. Or a tax liability, when you owe, is the product of someone having prepared or filed a tax return. I think you're muted.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that. So there's one more question in the chat, which says, what if you receive a 1099 NEC instead of a W-2 form from work?
Yeah, you still report the 1099 NEC. Because it's still income. So you still report it. Yeah, and it is possible that you can get a 1099 NEC. Absolutely very possible. It's just the difference between a W-2 and a 1099 NEC. A W-2 is given to an employee. Normally, a 1099 NEC is given to a contractor or self-employed person. And normally, with the 1099 NEC, there's no withholding whatsoever. They just report. If they paid you $10,000, that's what they report. They don't withhold. That's what they pay, and that's what's usually reported on the 1099 NEC. And so, if you're working as a contractor and you're getting a 1099 NEC or whatever you're doing, make sure you're saving your tax liability. If you're getting paid without them withholding money on your paycheck, save $50 per pay period. Save $100 per pay period. Because next year, let's say your tax rate is 10%. Next year, you're going to owe $1,000 on your return. And maybe you won't have it next year in April. So save it as you're going along through the year. Okay. No, really good questions, guys. I like this. It's been very interactive. I appreciate that.
We have another question in the chat. Says,
Yeah.
someone was asking if you change status from F1, but not yet a permanent resident, what do you file?
1040. Yeah, because you've already changed status from F1. It could be, I don't know, it could be F1 to H1B, right? H1B is the work visa. So, but you're not a permanent res. So you start filing a form 1040. Are there any other questions? Because I was about to bring another topic if there's no tax questions.
I'm sorry, one last question.
Yep, go ahead.
So I discovered that I'm supposed to pay taxes, right? And I was not prepared for that because I only get a stipend, not like a lot of money. So can I still file my taxes, but then pay it later when I have the money to pay?
Yeah.
How long do I have to pay?
So the IRS normally allows people to make payment plans from between a minimum of what I would recommend is file your tax return. If you're owing $1,000, just file it. Make a payment online because I think you can open an online account. And then you're gonna start getting bills from the IRS. They'll send a bill to say you owe, and then they should give you directions on where to pay. Just pay as much as you can as you go. Usually they'll give minimum of 6 months, a year. Sometimes some people get 72 months. I don't know no, it's not. Yeah, actually maybe 6 years for some people. But they're the ones who tell you how much they give you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
I wanted to understand for tax returns, how do you know how much you're going to receive after like filing your tax returns?
So after you've prepared, you should know. You should, because it depends. If you're using good software, as you're entering your income, if you enter your deduction, it should start telling you, oh, you have a refund of $300. Oh, you owe $300. So the way you know is the software should be calculating that as you're preparing your return. Maybe I should ask you, have you used any software, or you've never started the process yet?
No. I haven't started the process, but I was looking forward to filing a 1040, so I didn't know like how does it works exactly.
Yeah. Sign up with like a tax platform. Like I said, I'm more biased towards TurboTax. Open a TurboTax account and then start preparing your tax return using TurboTax. It will tell you, like once you enter your W-2 information, once you enter your filing status, it just keeps updating, and then the number keeps changing until you're done, and then you know that, and then it gives you your final answer.
Okay, it's fine. I think the last one is, do you need like a social security to file for 1040?
Yes. You have to have a social security number. Correct.
Well, okay, what if you don't have like from your school?
You have to apply for an ITIN number. You have to apply for an international tax ID number from the IRS. It's called an ITIN.
Okay. I don't know, like I'm on the waiting list of like getting a social security, so I don't know if I need to go through the school or like just wait on the social security offices.
So let me ask you, so did the school sign off on the paperwork for you to apply for a social security?
No, it's a change of status.
Oh, change of status. Okay.
Yeah.
So in a change of status, so right now, so I would say, because you're waiting for your social security, right?
Yes.
Is that correct? You're waiting for your social security number to come out.
Yes.
Tax returns are due April 15th, right?
Mhm.
So what I would recommend is that you file an extension for now. So if you look at my screen right here, this is an extension form. So I would say file for an extension or filing your tax return. That way you have more time to wait for your social security number, and then you file an accurate tax return. So there are instances where, the deadline to file your tax return is April 15th. That's the deadline. Then the IRS will say, oh, okay, we understand that life happens, things happen in life, and maybe you're not able to file on the due date on April 15th. They allow for you to apply for an automatic extension of time to file your tax return. An extension gives you an additional 6 months to file your tax return. So instead of having to file your tax return in April, you get another 6 months. In your return, you'll have to file your return by October 15th. So in your particular situation where you're waiting to get your social security number, you don't have it yet, I would file an extension, a form 4868. If you can write that form on the screen down.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, because like the date for SS offices, they were like, the earliest date was like 27 March. So I had like, you need like another week or like 2 weeks to receive like the card. So that's why I was asking about that. Yeah.
File this form. Now, an extension of an extension of time to file your tax return is not an extension of time to pay. So, two things. Calculate as if you're going to file it, if possible, or I mean, at the end of the day, the basic minimum is file your extension. I think I was getting a little bit technical there. File your extension, file your form 4868. And then it will allow you to be able to file your tax return even after April 15th. I would recommend that when you file your 4868, use the same software, HR Blog, TurboTax, and then you keep a copy of this extension form. It's very simple. It's it just asks your name, your address, your city. Oh, it does ask for your social security number here. In this case, I would still, if you don't have one, just leave it blank, but just file it.
Okay. Work anyhow, or like it's a different thing, like when it comes to filing.
Say that again. I didn't hear your question.
I was asking, does like the EAD number helps when filing, or you need like SSN?
Oh, EAD number, that's like work stuff, right?
Yeah,
Work
yeah.
number. No, it's totally different.
Okay.
Totally different. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I would file an extension and wait until your social security number comes to file the tax return.
Okay. So sorry, last question. So I need to print this form, then fill it like with a pen, then
Sure.
scan it. Uh-huh.
I'd really recommend it to e-file it.
Oh,
So
okay.
use TurboTax
All right.
or HR Block or even SprintTax. Maybe they have the ability for you to e-file. But if you cannot, if really you can't use the software, yes, you type this information out, you type it in, and estimated tax liability, you could say 0 and all that stuff, and 0 there. If you're out of the country and a US citizen, check here if you right. You see, so check here if you filed 1040 NR, didn't receive, so and then you check that box, you enter your address, and then you paper file. You just send it to the post office. And
What?
go ahead.
And like you ticked the box. Does it apply also like to just 1040?
Yeah, to 1040 as well. But this is just particularly if you're 1040, don't check this box. I was just don't see what I'm doing as
Okay, no, it's fine.
everyone's situation.
Okay. All right, thank you
What
so
I'm
much.
trying to show is you can actually type in information in these boxes.
All right.
And then the form should have an address. So these are the way to file your form. If you decide to print and go to the post office, it gives you the address. If you live in this state, you send it to this address, these states, and so forth and so forth. So I would say if your information is not, you don't have everything that you need for now, file a 4868, either online or paper form. And then you mail it or you e-file it using a software provider.
All right, it's okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, any other questions? Okay, so I think, are we at the top of the hour now? I think we've been going for about an hour now. So I don't want to bore too many things. I don't want to bore you guys with too much, but one topic I really want to discuss with you guys as well that I think will be helpful in terms of financial planning is building your credit. Very critical. So as you stay long in the US, you guys are going to figure out how to get credit cards. You're going to figure it out, which is good. It's okay because you want to build credit. So I'm recommending all of you on this meeting to do a Google search, how to build good credit, how to maintain good credit. If you've already messed up your credit somewhere, somehow, you've missed some payments, some bills, how to fix my credit. So how to build, how to maintain, how to fix my credit. Because all of you guys, maybe most of you are going to live here in the United States. You're going to get married, you're going to have kids. If not yet, you're going to have kids, you're going to want to buy houses, you're going to want to buy cars, all these things. I'll tell you, when I finished my master's degree in 2006, I made a phone call to my parents in Zimbabwe, and I said, I graduated in December of 06. I made a phone call in August of 06 and said, I graduate. I'm coming home. I am coming home. It will be done. My whole tribe all came and said, what? You're coming where? Home? Because we don't want to hear that story. You need to figure it out over there because things are not okay over here. And really, things are not okay. So, why I say this is you don't know what your future looks like, or you know what your future looks like, or you know that you want to live here in the United States. Regardless, make sure you're working on your credit. When I bought my first car, they ran my credit. Well, actually, let me take that back. My first car when I was in college, and I recommend don't finance cars in college. Don't do that. Maybe let's start there. Do not go and buy a $10,000 fancy car when you're in college. There's a lot of used cars out there, good ones. You know where to go, Facebook Marketplace or your local. You guys know about that stuff. There's no need to buy an expensive car where you're making payments on it if you're in college. However, the first year I graduated, the year I graduated out of college, I was working for a firm. And after 1.5 years, about a year in working there, I said, well, I think I've earned my stripes. Let me at least upgrade, get out of my little clunker here, and maybe buy a little bit of a decent car. I went there. They said, oh, okay, this is where you work. Oh, okay. Can you give us your pay stub? Oh, everything is looking good. Oh, we need to run your credit. Is it okay to run your credit? Here we go again. Your heart is pounding. It's just the reality because you like the car. But then they're talking about this credit thing, which I really never paid much attention to when I was in college. Well, luckily it turned out I didn't have any issues. It went through, everything was fine. But I encourage you guys, build your credit. If you don't know how to check your credit, I think you can Google free FICO scores. Check it. Because 3 years from now, or 4 years from now, when you're done and you're now ready to start doing some stuff, you're going to need it. It's going to determine how much you're going to pay for your house, for your family. It may even determine your rental, if you're even able to be put in a nice rental. You may say, yeah, I've been living here. Now I want to move to this new apartments and condos, and stuff like that. Jobs that I've applied to, interview goes very well. They like me, then they say, okay, HR is gonna do the paperwork. Next thing I get a call or an email, can we run your credit? What does my credit have to do with my job? But they do that. So make sure you're building your credit. There's $200 credit cards, $250 credit cards that you can get easy. You just make small payments every month. You maybe don't even use it, or maybe you swipe, you get your dinner one weekend, next month you pay off your dinner, just so that there's traffic. So this issue is near and dear to me because I've seen a lot of people struggle with it. So don't mess your credit up. Don't have your credit reported to a credit bureau place or something like that. I once had that happen to myself. I was a member of a gym in Boston, young, and and then I moved to Oklahoma, which is where I live here. So back in the day, they made you sign multi-year contracts. You sign a gym membership for 4 years. or actually maybe 1 year, 1 full year. But I changed jobs, so I couldn't go. So I left. I went to Oklahoma. The gym started sending me bills. And I said, that's it. Why are you sending me these bills? I don't use your gym. I left. They're like, well, you signed a 1-year contract. And me being dumb and young, I said, I'm not going to pay. I didn't pay. And guess what? They dinged my credit. So be very careful. And it took me 5 years to get that thing off my credit. You know, of course, I may have felt that why should I pay for something I'm not using, right? I think it's logically right. But what if I had just paid the whatever 6 months that was left? It could have saved me a couple of $1,000 in other expenses to get that thing off my credit. And all the grief and stress that I had to go through trying to fix it. I eventually fixed it, but it cost me tons of telephone calls, hours, emotional distress, financial distress. So I'm really saying this because it is important. If you're gonna stay in the United States or even anywhere else in the world, it's just a good practice to take care of your credit. I think I've really said as much as I could. Don't spend too much when you're in college. Don't go for the glitz and glamour of things. You have nothing to prove to anybody. Get your education. Don't be in a hurry to be proving to people back home that, oh, I've made it in America. Because some people try to do that. They try to fly all over. Oh, I'm going to go to this beach for vacation. We went to Florida. We went to Cancun. When you're a student, focus on your education, get done. All those things are gonna come. Don't be tempted by that 1, 2, or 3 people who do that all the time and they're like, wow, I wish I had that. No, just hunker down, focus. The things you can do locally, around college campuses, around your cities, enjoy it because your time will come. And I can say that because my time came at some point after I was done with college. So take care of yourselves. Don't buy expensive things. Make the right financial decisions. Maintain your credit. File your taxes. I know taxes are very complicated. Seek a CPA firm that's local. If you can't find any, go online. You can find some resources there. Like I said, my information, I think you guys have it. You're absolutely free to share it if you want to. Now, I don't prepare people's tax returns, but I've always given myself to say my service to my community is to advise, to navigate with you. I don't prepare people's tax returns, but I will get on a call with you and answer the questions that you have for you to prepare your tax return. That I can do any day, anytime, no charge. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for your time. If there's any other questions, feel free, but I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Munjanja. Can you please give like virtual applauses and this has been truly amazing. Of course, we know that you have a lot on your plate, of course, and you're doing amazing things. So just you taking the time to be here with us means so much. We're just really, really grateful.
I really enjoy it. I encourage you, as you finish, be a community person. Give back. I graduated 20 years ago. Some people don't care to come back and give back, but I do. I have a passion for it, and I encourage you guys. It doesn't mean we do the same thing, but find a passion to give back to society much into your futures.
Thank you so much. Even just the format of the workshop has been so informative. And thank you for answering all of our questions in such great detail. And of course, even just by seeing your journey, we are so inspired. I know I am very, very inspired. seeing how you've been able to just do this amazing life for yourself and learn this very complicated system. So we are very inspired. Thank you also for offering your services for us in the future. So I had mentioned this in the beginning, but New Seasons is a collection of so many people from so many different countries. And a lot of families and schools are represented here. So even though this number is like 30 people, there's so many more people who benefit from this. And we recorded this session and we upload it. So we're just so grateful. We know the impact will keep going even after this day. And to everyone who is here as well, thank you so much for being here, for spending your Sunday afternoons with us. And I put a survey in the chat. It's just to help us to see where you guys are at. Maybe you have suggestions for us to be better in the future, or maybe you have feedback for Mr. Munjanja, and we'll share that with him as well. But this has meant so much. I guess if you feel free to stick around and ask a few more questions, you can do that. But I'll stop recording. And thank you so much. This has been amazing.
Okay, thank you.